Hi, bonjour, good morning. It's really wonderful to be here and a great honor to be celebrating the 10-year anniversary of what certainly for me too has been a very meaningful journey. So thank you, Pocket, for having me here, and thank you all for coming. What I thought we'd do is I would speak a little bit about some of the things that are happening in the world of positive psychology. You know, it has become a cliche already to talk about our times as being difficult times. But you know, the thing with cliches is they sometimes become cliches because they are true. You know that today in the United States, at least post-November, there are many more children who are seeking help psychologically. Schools are not able to provide the children that are seeking psychological help anymore, and this just happened recently. The last time that it was this way was actually after 9/11 in 2001, when once again the mental health professionals did not have the capacity to provide the necessary services. But there's a very big difference, at least as far as psychology is concerned, between 2001 and 2017. And the difference is the approach to the field of positive psychology. So in 2001, positive psychology was a very new field. Not many people knew about it, and many would discard it as something that is there for, you know, the privileged, something that is there for people who are already doing well, who want to be happier. It wasn't perceived as a significant and important part of the whole field of psychology, and certainly not of psychological treatment. Today, after a lot of research that has been conducted, more psychologists, more teachers, more professionals in the workplace are realizing that the place of positive psychology is in preventing psychological disease, it's in preventing anxiety, it's in preventing depression. So today, the research shows that doing simple things like the ones I talk about in the book, like expressing gratitude or like keeping a journal, things like expressing kindness, these are nice things that can make us happier. But no less important, these are actually things that can prevent the onset of psychological disease. So, you know, I think it would be wonderful if each and every person in society could afford to have a therapist. A person she or he could talk to about their problems, ranging from the elections to conflict with their partner. It would be wonderful if we all could have that privilege. However, it's not realistic. And therefore, in this reality, what we need is something that will be able to help people, psychologically help people at scale, in large numbers. And that is exactly the role that positive psychology is coming to play in our society. The question that many psychologists have asked is, how and why do interventions as simple as expressing gratitude, as simple as writing for 10 minutes, as simple as sitting in a different way or going for a run, why do these very brief interventions have such a major impact? Now, again, if I go back 20 years ago, when psychologists began to talk about these things, they were dismissed specifically because other psychologists would say, how could these things have impact? But today, 20 years later, we have the research that shows that these small interventions have a major impact in preventing the onset of anxiety and depression, for example. The question is why and how? The reason is that everything that we do, everything in our life is connected to everything else. In other words, it's because of the interconnectedness of our everyday experiences. So let me give you an example. Let's say you come into work and your colleague sees you and says to you, "Oh wow, you look wonderful today." And you didn't think about it before, but suddenly you feel a lot better. And you're walking a little bit, more up straight, and you're smiling a little bit more. And then you see the next person. Now the next person is already seeing that you're smiling a little bit and that you're standing up straight and says, "Oh, you look terrific today." And you feel even better. And then the next person, and so on and so on. One small event at the beginning of the day started an upward spiral. And think about another example. You come into work and your colleague sees you and says to you, "Is there anything wrong?" Now, there may have been nothing wrong before, but now there is. Because you think, "Oh, what happened?" And then you feel worse. And then the next person sees you and says, "Oh, is there anything wrong?" Because now you've started again a spiral, but not up, rather down. Again, one small event can affect, very often does affect, the entire day. Now, the way to look at it is to look at each such point as a potential leverage point, a point that can impact the rest of the system. Now, given that everything is interconnected in our life, every point can be a leverage point. This is the basic premise of the book. The basic premise is that at every moment in our life, we have a choice. At every moment in our life right now, or when we're with our partner speaking sweetly or having a conflict, or when we wake up in the morning and we're too tired to go to work. At every moment in our life, we have a choice to leverage what we do, how we look at the world, and therefore how we impact and affect the rest of our day, and in that respect, the rest of our life. The difference between people who are better able to deal with anxiety and depression and those who don't deal with it well, the difference between happier people and relatively unhappy people is not in the big picture of their lives. It's in the details of their lives. It's in what they choose to do in moment by moment. Because everyone has difficulties and hardships. These are the topics I talked about in my previous books. We all struggle and suffer and experience pain. The question is, what do we choose to do at specific moments? How many of these leverage points do we choose to have during the day? And again, we don't need many in order to make the big difference. So I would like to give just a few examples of such choice points, such leverage points in our life that can help us, first of all, prevent anxiety and depression from coming in many cases. Second, can help us get out of a downward spiral. And third, can simply make us happier. So the first choice I'd like to talk about is the choice to move, to get up and walk. Research actually that came out, there's a lot of research, but research that came out 2 weeks ago talks about how when you look at people's happiness levels, one of the best predictors is whether, if you look at it right now, is whether over the past 15 minutes they were moving or were sitting. People who were moving over the last 15 minutes are more likely to be happy than people who were just sitting down, whether it's in front of a computer or in a meeting. I realize the irony of what I'm saying, given that we're all sitting down. However, one thing that can be very important during the day is to use, your smartphone, or if you have a watch, to remind you every half hour to get up and take 10 to 15 steps. It's a very small thing, but it can make a big difference in terms of how you feel, and no less important, it also clears the mind. We're more likely to come up with creative ideas if we move rather than if we're sedentary. And when we talk about movement, we're talking about going for a walk, 3-4 times a week, or going for a run, or going dancing. These are all good things. But also the small choices to just get up and move, as I said, can help our thinking as well as our feeling. and our physical health. More and more psychologists are talking about sitting as the new smoking. So if you find yourself at work or you find yourself in a conflict with someone, just get up, move, and that can be that one trigger point, that leverage point that can make the difference. Another leverage point that, again, over the last few years has been shown to be very powerful is giving, helping others. You see, there is a very deeply rooted distinction in our culture between giving and receiving, between, for example, being selfish or selfless. One of the things that the Dalai Lama, when he visited the West, was very surprised by was this very distinction. For instance, the word compassion, when we talk about it in the West, we usually mean, well, compassion and goodness and kindness towards other people. Compassion in Tibetan, which is the word tsewe, means compassion for others and compassion for self. Two sides of the same coin. One of the best ways to increase our own levels of happiness is to help other people. The research, whether it's by people like Sonia Lyubomirsky, whether it's by people by Robert Emmons and others, shows that whether we're feeling down or we're feeling great, one sure way of raising our own levels of happiness is by going out of our way and helping others. For instance, helping others by giving them direction of how to get to a place, helping others by even opening a door, helping others by even smiling at another person, helping others by giving charity. It doesn't matter. The smallest of things or the biggest of things are among the most powerful ways of increasing our levels of happiness. Another powerful leverage point. Another leverage point is relationships or interactions. You know that when we are feeling down, very often the thing that we want to do is crawl into bed, turn on the television and do nothing. That may not be the right thing to do when we're feeling down. Sometimes it is, but very often it's actually getting out and spending time with people. Even if initially we don't feel like doing so, the relationship, the interaction can start an upward spiral. One of the most disturbing studies today on young people, teenagers and very, very young adults, is that they are experiencing more loneliness, less empathy, compassion, whether it's towards themselves or others. And the reason for this finding is because they're spending a lot more time online rather than in real relationships. So making the choice to switch this off, making the choice to be engaged in a relationship, a real relationship, can contribute in a meaningful way to increasing levels of well-being, as well as being preventative when it comes to anxiety, depression, which are often caused by loneliness. So I talked about the choice to give, I talked about the choice to move, I talked about the choice to engage in relationships, and I want to talk about one more choice. I mean, there are 101 choices here, but I want to talk about just one more choice to summarize, a choice that I actually call the meta choice, the overarching choice. And that meta choice is the choice to be mindful, the choice to be present. Why is it? I mean, if you think about it, many of the choices that I spoke about, or the choices that I talk about in the book, like being grateful, not taking for granted what we have, like being kind and nice, like the choice to move, like the choice to interact with people. All these choices are straightforward choices. We know them. You don't need a psychologist to tell you that these things are important. Your grandmother probably told you all these things. However, In our lives, especially in our very busy modern lives, we very often forget to engage with other people or to move around or to be nice to another person. We're not mindful, present to the importance of choosing in that way. We know it, but we don't do it. So what it's about is being aware, being mindful of the fact that at every moment in my life, I have a choice. It's this awareness, this present moment awareness, that makes all the difference in terms of how I behave towards my partner or friend or family, to how I sit, to how I walk, to what I do. It's this present moment awareness that opens the door, essentially, that gives me the opportunity to make all these choices. Because if I'm not mindful, if I'm not aware, then I will just live life reactively, automatically. Check my email all the time, get angry when something external happens, react to it. I will not be present, I will not be mindful. In other words, I will not choose the kind of life that I want to lead. So mindfulness helps us see the opportunities that we have at every moment, be aware of the choices that we can make. And in addition, learning to be mindful also contributes to our well-being, regardless of the choices that we make after. So there is the meta benefit of mindfulness in that we're aware of the choices, and there is also the micro benefit of mindfulness. We know from a lot of research, a lot of neuroscience, a lot of research in psychology, that learning to be more mindful of what we're doing as we're doing it, in and of itself, contributes to our well-being, to our happiness. And here lies the importance, the value, the critical importance and value of the work that you do. You see, when people are surfing the web, when they're on the line, when they're clicking, this is not about training mindfulness. This is about training the ability to multitask, and it's breeding distractedness rather than mindfulness. Do you know that the average time that people spend on a web page today is 7 seconds? So they're present for 7 seconds, or rather for 5 seconds, because the last 2 seconds they're already thinking about what future page are they looking for. This is a very different experience from the experience of reading a book. Reading a book provides us the experience of being present and mindful. So beyond the pleasure that we potentially derive from reading, beyond the important information that we may get from a book, what we're getting here, what our minds are getting here, is a dose of mindfulness practice. And therefore, it's not just enjoyable to read, it's also healthy to read, because mindfulness is associated with health, physical health as well as mental health. So this is the micro benefit of reading a book. It's a mindful experience. I want to talk just before I end about the macro value of reading books. The word meditation in Tibetan is the word gom, which means familiar, to familiarize yourself with something. In other words, to get to know something deeply and well. And how do we get to know something? By spending time on it. So in meditation, you spend a lot of time looking at your breath, or studying a mantra or an object. In a very similar way, when you read a book, you get to know the book. Not if you click 7 seconds, you don't get to know much in depth. But when you read a book, you get to know an idea, a concept, an author, a period in history. You learn, you exercise the muscle of knowing, of getting to know. And then, if you exercise this muscle of getting to know, whether it's your breath or whether it's a book that you're reading, again, a muscle that is not exercised when you're just clicking and surfing the web. When you exercise this muscle, you can then apply it to relationships as well, to getting to know another person. One of the reasons why levels of happiness are going down today is because the kind of relationships that people are cultivating are click relationships rather than deep relationships. So the reason why it's so important to engage in reading is not only because of the information that lies in books. Information we can get online. But it's because of the muscles that we exercise, the mental muscles that we exercise, that don't just lead to enjoyment and to the benefits of being present. They also lead to the ability to know better, whether it's a book or whether it's the person who's sitting right next to me. So once again, thank you for the work that you're doing. It's soothing, it's healing, and it's critically important in our world. Thank you. Merci. Thank you. Thank you very much. No, what you're talking about is a phenomenon that people like Daniel Kahneman, who's a positive psychologist and a Nobel Prize winner in economics, talks about, which is hedonic adaptation. You see, it's like buying a new car. At the beginning, you're very excited about the car, but after a month, two, maybe 5 months, you're already used to it. It doesn't provide you the same pleasure that it did at the beginning when you got it. And, it's a real phenomenon, and it's a real challenge if we are to lead a happier life. How do we get around, in a sense, the hedonic adaptation? And there are a few ways. The first and most important one is to be attuned, to be connected to reality. And I will explain what I mean. You see, if there is someone at work who says, "Oh, you look great, you look amazing," and he says it to everyone every day, then, you begin to question the reality of their statement. But if you have someone whom you trust, who's honest with you, who will tell you things the way they are, their words will have a lot more meaning. Why? Because you know that they are real, authentic with you. See, one of the biggest problems in the US system of education is that starting in the 1960s, some psychologists and educators decided that the way to increase students' self-esteem and well-being is to tell them how great and amazing they are all the time. And it had actually the opposite of the effect that they intended. It actually led to less happiness and lower self-esteem, because students no longer believe the words of their teachers or parents or educators in general. You see, because children are young, but they're not stupid. So the first thing is to be real and to surround yourself with people who are real. The second thing is variety, to change things around. Here is a study that was done on relationships. So they took couples who have been together for 5 years or longer. And very often 5 years is enough time, certainly for the initial excitement, to go down. And what they did was they divided them into 3 groups. One group, business as usual. Continue as you were before. Second group, start spending more time together. Third group, start spending more time together in different ways. The second group that spent more time together certainly benefited, because very often we don't have much time to spend together. But the group that improved the most, the relationship improved the most, was to spend time together in different ways. And to speak a little bit about relationships, just like we all have the desire to be alone and the desire to be together, we all benefit from being by ourselves, and we all benefit by being with other people. In the same way, we all need familiarity, and we all feel good when we know someone and we're together with someone whom we've known for many years. And at the same time, we all need variety. The best relationships are the ones who are able to combine both. And that means variety in terms of the places that we go out to eat, or we go to different plays or movies, or meet different people, engage with different friends, or try new things in bed. Whatever it is, having the familiarity and the variety coexist, that is what leads to long-term happy relationships. And one last thing, also variety in the small things in life. And that is a choice. For example, if I walk home from work every day along the same street, why not once in a while walk through another street? So that's one way of introducing variety. Another way of introducing variety is in the familiar. So I walk past the exact same tree every day, but I can learn to look at it in a different, fresh way. Just like I can learn to look at the person who's at home day in and day out in a fresh, different way. To create what, in one of my teacher's words, Ellen Langer, is to create novel distinctions in the familiar. And you can do it in anything that you do. For example, they asked musicians who were playing the same piece over and over and over again. You know, they could be playing Ravel's Bolero over and over again, and you play the same theme over and over again. And they asked them one thing. They said to them, look for novel distinctions in what you're already playing. Two things happened. The first thing, they enjoyed playing the piece more. Second, they had professionals listen to them playing the piece without knowing what they were told before. And the professionals evaluated the quality of their playing as higher. To make a choice, to look for the new in the familiar. Thank you.